Good morning, everyone. So, welcome to Jennifer, Mark. See, we got some attendees starting to come in here. We'll give it a little bit of time just to see if we get some more folks joining us before we get started. Jennifer, did you want to say anything before we begin the tutorial?
Sure, I can say, well, welcome to the tutorial. We appreciate everybody uh, coming and then participating in this. I think Chameleon Cloud is an awesome resource that's going to be very instrumental in assisting in conducting some of these evaluations for the reproducibility committee. So for supercomputing 2025. So we really appreciate you all taking the time, and we appreciate Chameleon and the people who support that to be able to provide these presentations for us. I think it's important if there's anything that comes across as ambiguous or you need clarification on to not be shy and to ask questions and to engage, because this is you know, these people know this tool very well. Some of us may be new to the platform, and just don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any questions. That also goes for the process for conducting the reviews. I think that it's kind of evolved over the last few years with supercomputing. The review process has changed, it's grown, it's improved, but it also has many steps involved, and I think there's a lot of questions that those of you may have that need to be addressed. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. So I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you again for hosting this.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I did make I did give all of our attendees so far talking permission. So if you want to unmute and ask questions during the presentation or tutorial or anything, feel free. We will also, of course, have lots of time at the end for questions. I'm joined by my colleague, Mark Powers, who is a research software engineer for the testbed. So he has lots of experience and is very knowledgeable about all of the technical aspects of the testbed. If there's something that he cannot answer, then chances are our other research software engineers can answer them. So we'll take your question back to someone who can and make sure you get an answer to it. The other thing I'm going to mention too, right at the beginning, is um, this is going to be very important for getting help, as we were just discussing. Um, the help desk is a very important resource. I'm just going to put the link to this. Oh, did I put the wrong link? No. So if you go to this chameleon.org/help, we have a help desk that is staffed during the week. We operate from about 9 to 5 business time in Chicago. So if you have any questions or at any point you get stuck on anything and you need some more one-on-one support to work through something, you're always welcome to reach out to us through the help desk. And we have folks on there responding to tickets and looking at things that are coming in so that we can be ready to help people with problems they're encountering. And it's also a place where you'll be able to actually get more assistance outside of kind of what we have in our documentation and whatnot. So anyways, that's a great resource. I highly recommend if you get stuck at any point and you need more assistance, please utilize the help desk. It's a great resource. We're fortunate to be able to have, the ability to provide that kind of real-time support. So, yeah, Anthony, you have a question, it looks like. Anthony, do you want to ask your question?
Is the website chameleon.org/help?
The website is yes, that's the link to the help desk. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the main presentation here. All right, so today we're going to be going over Chameleon, specifically how to use Chameleon for artifact review, which is purpose why, or hopefully the purpose for everyone being here today. My name is Mark Richardson. I'm the technical project manager for Chameleon Cloud. I am joined by Mark Powers, who I mentioned earlier is engineer. And we're here to hopefully give you kind of the essential information you need to work with the artifacts for SC25. Just a quick overview of what Chameleon is, if you're completely unfamiliar with it. It's a bare metal reconfigurable testbed with a large diversity and scale of hardware. We are built on top of OpenStack, which is a open source software for managing cloud resources. We basically took over Stack and built a bunch of custom stuff on top of it to specifically operate a testbed for computer science research and education. A big thing we're doing is, of course, promoting digital artifact sharing. A big part of this is done through our integration with the Jupyter environment, which allows folks to put together interactive notebooks that can be used to run experiments, orchestrate and run experiments on the testbed. Another way we promote artifact sharing is through the sharing of appliances or images or snapshots. So some of the artifacts that you might be working with on Chameleon may be an image that's been shared by an author. And so we'll go over some of the ways that you can use these digital artifacts and run them on the testbed yourself. Just a quick overview of what Chameleon has done so far. It's a 10-year-old project, so been around for quite a while. There's over 1,200 unique projects. We have over 12,000 users since inception, and we've seen almost tracked almost 800 papers that have been published as a result of working on Chameleon. What kind of hardware do we have here? So obviously hardware is going to be a big consideration for you. And for Chameleon, we have hardware is distributed across two primary sites right now. So we have the Chi at UC, which is U Chicago site. That is most of the hardware you see on the screen here is reflecting kind of what we currently have. So, you know, CPU nodes, GPU nodes, FPGA, storage. We have networking equipment as well, resources that you can use. Chi Attack is the other main site. That's going to be another area where this is going to be a much bigger site. So if you're actually looking for a little bit more scale in something, then you might want to go to Chi Attack. Again, we have some crossover in terms of resources that we offer at both sites. One thing to note is that if you are looking for GPU nodes and you need specifically, you know, A100 or something that's a little bit more recent generation, the Liquid and GigaIO disaggregated hardware that's listed down here actually does have GPUs included as well. So we do have like these GPU nodes here listed along with the ones at U Chicago. But then some of the other nodes that we have may not be obviously appear to have certain hardware at first. But you can actually, you know, for instance, get GPUs outside of some of these traditional GPU nodes that we have. And then we have Chi at Edge, which is edge-based hardware. So, you know, that's like more your Raspberry Pis, your Jetson Nanos. And then all of this connected through, you know, 100 gig network. And we actually also provide a lot of storage as well, persistent storage. So, you know, you don't have to worry about things getting deleted between your leases. You do have to take steps to ensure that that doesn't happen, but we can discuss that a little bit more. We also do have Fabric as well as a resource of it. I think the sites are actually stitched together with Fabric, so so you have that ability to utilize that testbed as well when you're working with some of the Chameleon hardware. Not sure if that's going to be a consideration for any of you, but if you do end up with an artifact that requires that kind of thing, just know that we do have that capability. So we'll go over the hardware a little bit more. I'm going to show you a hardware resource browser that you can use to find hardware. There's another availability calendar that we'll look at that will also show you, you know, what nodes are available. All hardware, at least bare metal hardware, is going to be reserved first on Chameleon before you can use it. So let's say you wanted to use one of these, you know, Skylake nodes. We do require you to reserve the node, and then you can access the node and launch instances on it. So that's an important part of the workflow. Speaking of the workflow, so kind of what I was just getting into, this is kind of the basic workflow we see for users. So for you, this is probably going to be somewhat similar. You're going to need to look for resources. Once you find them, you're going to reserve them or allocate them to your project. And then you're going to configure the environment and run an experiment. And we'll go over each of these a little bit more in detail. I already mentioned we have the edge capability for Chameleon. This is just mentioning some of the cool projects that people have done with that. And then we have, yeah, so that's Chi at Edge. So that's going to be an option if you're working with an artifact that requires edge resources. Just know we do have Chi at Edge, which provides the resources. I'll mention here, we also have images. So this is going to be kind of the fundamental building block. Once you get hardware, you're going to need something to run on it, right? So this is where that comes in. As I mentioned too, users can share their own images that they've created on the testbed. So in some cases, you might be starting with an image that's been shared with you that already has the environment set up. And Chameleon, as we'll see, makes it really easy for you to reserve hardware and then boot instances on that hardware using whichever image you decide is most appropriate as a starting point. And as I was just mentioning, we have this snapshot utility tool. This may not be as important for you since you're just going to be evaluating some other person's artifact. However, if you do need to, for instance, save your work in the sense of, saving the instance, we do offer this ability to do that. And then, well, I'm going to skip this slide because you guys aren't doing the actual packaging here. I'll just mention we did have a community workshop on HPC reproducibility. This was happened during Supercomputing 2024. We had a really great discussion at that workshop. Maybe some of you were even there or heard about it at some point. But the point of this was to come together and discuss kind of exactly what we're here for today, which is how do you create and evaluate artifacts? How do you make reproducibility more cost effective and incentivized for a larger group of the community? So we ended up distilling a lot of that discussion into a report that we've published on Zenodo. And you can scan the QR code here, which will take you to a page where you can find a download link. And I recommend checking this out if you have time. I think it's useful to review and kind of maybe follow as a guide in some sense. Of course, you may disagree with some of the recommendations and things, but we tried very hard to document a lot of the challenges involved in things like artifact evaluation. So I recommend the read if you have time, and maybe you even learn something that you can apply during this evaluation. So, to my point here, I have listed some of the insights from here. I'm going to skip this for now just because you can go read the report if you want to get more information about what we did. One thing I will note is part of the report we did package some artifact checklists, some styling checklists. So those are particularly useful resources in the report that you might consider checking out. I'll also go through today, after I'm done with the overview, we'll go through Trovi a little bit more and discuss what we can do with that. In some cases, you may be working with Trovi, particularly if an author has utilized the Jupyter environment to perhaps create a notebook or something as their artifact. So we'll discuss how that can be used. Trovi has been kind of a growing service for sharing testbed artifacts since about 2021. So it's been a great tool for artifact reproducibility initiatives, and hopefully it may come in handy for this one is here. Yeah, I'm going to skip this slide just because I know we're short on time and you probably have a lot of other questions. Oh, one last thing. In some cases, if an author did create a test artifact and share it on Trovi, they may need to enable Day Pass, Chameleon Day Pass, which is a way for authors to share an artifact and then provide some of their project resources for other people to use the artifact. So if this is the case for you, just let us know. This shouldn't really be an issue because everyone should have allocation resources to use if you're once you've joined the platform. But we can go over that a little bit more in detail as well. So that's it for the main slides. I'm now going to just kind of pop over to our to our website here, and we can walk through a lot of the kind of essentials that we'll need to discuss today for getting started with Chameleon. So first thing, of course, is going to be your accounts, right? So Chameleon is a platform. We do have user accounts. You need to have a user account in order to use it. So how do you do that? When you first go to chameleoncloud.org, you're going to immediately see a login box up here. You might think login. Well, I haven't signed up yet. Same thing here. It's a little confusing, but when you first come to Chameleon, you're going to click that login box. The login box can take you to a page that's going to have a big green box that says federated login or sign in using federated login. This is a service that's provided by Globus ID. So this is basically a simple way for a lot of people who belong to Globus affiliated institutions to log in using their existing application credentials rather than needing to create new credentials for the website specifically. So this hopefully makes it super easy for you to log in. You pretty much shouldn't need to do almost anything other than just click that login button and go through that process. If you do run into issues at this point, we offer some other authentication methods for the testbed. These include Gmail and GitHub, as well as OrcID. So I think the Globus ID should be sufficient for everyone, but if you do have issues creating that first account through that, then we offer some other alternative ways to do that. So hopefully you don't have any issues with creating an account. The second thing that you're going to need to do almost immediately, so after you've created an account, so here you can see I'm logged in under my account here, you're going to be taken to this dashboard page. And this is going to be kind of your user command center for Chameleon. At a very high level, it's going to show you all of the active projects that you have on the testbed. And I mentioned that help desk earlier. So if you have any tickets that are open with the help desk, that's going to show up here as well. Projects, what's a project? A project is basically kind of what we use to manage work on Chameleon. So all users have to have an active project in order to use any resources on the testbed. So if I didn't have any projects here, I would have no access to the testbed because I don't have an active project. So if you log in and you see that you don't have an active project, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to reach out to me or to Jennifer or one of the organizers and ask to be added to the SC25AE reviewer project here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this page and walk through this page a little bit more because you may need to look at it at some point. So this is the project page that we've set up for this particular group. So you will need to be added to this if you want to actually use any of the resources on Chameleon. We have an active allocation, so we have resources available. All you need to do is just get added to this project. And once you're added, then you will immediately have access to start using the testbed resources. So very important. If you're wondering, how do I get access to this? This is your way. You basically, we need to put your user name or your email here and then add you. And then you need to be able to create that account and get your account set up. And once that happens, once those two things happen, you're ready to go and you're ready to start working with the testbed. So you can see we already have a couple of folks who have been added to this project here, including the chairs themselves, who are also capable of adding users. So hopefully this happens quickly. You don't have to spend too much time waiting around for that to happen. So that answers kind of the primary question there. What is a project? Why do you need one? And how do you get access to one? That should all be handled essentially for you. But again, just mention it because you should be able to confirm once you've been added to the project on your account on this dashboard page. So if you are supposedly being added to the project, but then you come here and you don't see it, then something's going wrong. You need to reach out again and ask someone about this. Andres, I see you have a hand raised. Do you want to unmute and ask a question? Andres, do you have a question, or should we keep going? All right.
Okay.
Looks like,
Okay.
Oh, go
Okay.
for it.
Sorry. Okay. So we already have been added to the Chameleon SC25 project, or we should wait?
No, so I'm not exactly sure how Jennifer and Yusuf are handling this, but it doesn't look like everyone's been automatically added to the project. So it looks like if you aren't added to the project yet, you need to let Jennifer or Yusuf know, and then they'll add you. Alternatively, you can also let me know, and I can add you to the project. But probably better to let them know. Is that generally right, Jennifer, or could you potentially just preemptively add everyone so they just have access like automatically? Sorry. Okay. Okay. So yes, so looks like Jennifer's saying please request access to the project. So you'll need to reach out and request access specifically. So if you haven't done that yet, then you probably aren't included in the project yet. All right, so that covers the really basic building step here of getting a project. Now let's talk about some of the more exciting things. So this is going to be all under this experiment tab here on the website. Again, we're on chameleoncloud.org. We haven't left this website yet. So we're going to go now to this experiment tab, and we're going to go down to hardware. So I mentioned earlier, we have a ton of hardware on Chameleon. These are all bare metal nodes, very important because bare metal, you're going to reserve the entire node. It's going to be yours. You're going to have host root access. You're going to be able to break it and boot it from, shut it down, power it off, power it on, do whatever, reboot from custom kernel. So as a result, as I mentioned, we do need to reserve a lot of this hardware before we can use it. We do provide a way for you to reserve something on demand, and then you start using it right away. So it's not like everything you have to reserve like a week in advance and then wait a week. If there's availability, you can get a node right away and you can start using it. However, there may be instances where it might be resource contention. There might be other people using hardware. So you may need to plan a little bit in advance and just say, okay, I'm going to, plan to use this about a week from now. Etc. But before I get ahead of myself here, so bare metal nodes, all of these bare metal nodes are going to be listed in this hardware discovery page here. Again, so you're going to go to experiment hardware discovery. It's going to be the very first one at the top. And then this is going to show you the resource browser. And this is going to be where you can see a very high level view of all the nodes that we offer on Chameleon. You will also be able to filter these nodes by site. So if you're looking specifically for TAC nodes, I can come down here and click the TAC button, and then I'll be able to see all the nodes highlighted that are at TAC specifically. And then likewise, I can do the same for UChicago. So I can look at all the nodes that we have at Chicago. And then there's a couple of other ways to filter this data here. So if you have some specific filtering criteria that you want to apply immediately, you can come down here, and then we have even more advanced filters. So lots of ways to filter the data here. And then once you're kind of looking at something more specifically, so let's say I wanted to check out the details about these GPU A100 nodes, I can come here and I can look at this view button here. And when I click on that, it's going to bring me to a different view. And this view is going to show me the specific node names as well as all of the actual context for the node itself. So this is a great way to get familiar with the hardware. And, let's say you have a specific type of hardware that you need to find because that's what, an author used. This is one way you can come and look through what we have and see if you can find something that's comparable, if not the exact same specification. So hardware browser, very useful for finding hardware and learning more about the specs. This is not actually going to show you whether or not hardware is available. So you'll notice that none of this is actually telling me if I can reserve any of these nodes right now. To do that, we're going to have to go to one of the Chameleon sites, OpenStack sites. So as I mentioned, we're built on top of OpenStack. Each one of our sites is an OpenStack site. And once we're on a site, then we'll be able to look at the availability calendar and we'll be able to see what hardware specifically is available. Before we do that, I'm just going to pop over to appliances real quick. So again, I mentioned that this is appliances or images are going to be potentially useful when recreating experiments. So let's say you need a particular environment. You can come here and look for specific appliances that have been either uploaded by Chameleon staff. So these are Chameleon supported images, or have been user uploaded. So these might be maybe less reliable, but in some cases it might be exactly what you're looking for because maybe your author has uploaded an appliance and is asking you to use it. So that's is the area where you come to do that. And then again, when you're launching your instance, you'll have the option to select which appliance or image you want to use to boot, and that will be where you'll be able to make that selection. Below appliances, we have the Jupyter interface. So this probably isn't something you need to use as a reviewer because you're going to just be mostly interacting with artifacts that other people have created. However, if you do end up needing to interact with like the testbed and you want to use Jupyter environment to do that, you can go to the Jupyter interface. This is connected to the project that you're using, the active project, so it will automatically use resources from that. But yeah, that's one way you can work in the Jupyter environment with Chameleon. And then I'll come back a little bit later to the Trovi repository, which I mentioned as a place where people can also upload artifacts and other people can then launch them on the testbed and run them. And then down here, we have all of our sites. So I mentioned the TAC and UChicago sites. These are some of, NCAR is actually has been added as a main site as well, although it doesn't have as much hardware yet because it's still being set up. And Northwestern University and this SHIET and RP are also associate sites. So you're welcome to check out stuff there. I don't think there's maybe as much useful things on those sites as TAC and UC, but those sites are available as associate sites. And then the other thing we have, I'll mention, I've been talking a lot about bare metal. We do have virtual instances as well. So if you need just a kind of a regular VM, we do provide that through the KVM at TAC site. This is going to be almost exactly the same kind of workflow that you're using for bare metal on Chameleon, except KVM for the most part is all just on demand. So we don't provide advanced reservations for VM machines. It's just you request it and you get it. And then we do have very important. So a lot of reviewers are working with H100s, or at least authors have been working with H100s. If you're in need of an H100 node, KVM attack is actually the only place we have H100s on Chameleon right now. And this is a relatively new resource that we just started offering. And we have VMs that you can reserve with a full H100 GPU attached to the VM and pass through to the VM. So if you're working with something that requires H100s, you may consider going to KVM and TAC and seeing if you can reserve one of those VMs, because that might be sufficient for maybe doing what you're trying to do. However, please note those nodes are actually reserved. So almost everything on KVM is on demand except for the H100 enabled nodes. Those ones you do need to reserve first before you can get the VM. And again, it's a similar process to bare metal reservation. So sorry, go ahead, Mark. You have a question. I'm assuming I said something incorrect.
Yeah, so we're actually winding down the on-demand VMs at KVM. I just want to say, so you will have to go through a reservation workflow, and our docs do explain what that is. But yeah, as Mark was saying, the on-demand usage was kind of the predominant form until pretty recently. So if you see a reference to that, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's right. So yeah, in case, I guess it maybe isn't, is that happening like in the middle of this, or?
That will be happening over the next month, is our plan.
Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't affect you all. I think for now you can just assume that if you're getting a non-GPU VM or you need a non-GPU VM, that's going to be mostly on demand, although it may switch to a reservation at some point. But hopefully you will already be done with this evaluation at that point. However, if you come back to Chameleon, you'll have to reserve your VMs. All right, so let's go ahead and pop over to one of these sites just so you can get a sense of what we're looking at for the Chameleon OpenStack sites. So here I just went to Chi-Attack. A couple of important things to note at the beginning. Everything is site dependent. Once you're off of that main Chameleon site and you're onto the actual experiment site, so you can see now I'm here at this new URL, Chi-Attack Chameleon Cloud. If I switch to UChicago, I'm going to be on a different site here. So you can see these are different, right? So if I'm looking at this one, it's going to look different than the one I'm looking at UChicago. Very important to note. That can be really confusing sometimes. The other thing is if you are a user of Chameleon, you have maybe other active projects, those are also going to show up here. So if you have multiple active projects, you may need to kind of make sure you're checking which one you're on and make sure you switch to the one that you have active. And then leases are going to be made under this reservations tab. So we just talked a lot about how you have to make leases for hardware. So if you need to get hardware and you need to make a lease, you're going to come to one of these sites. You're going to go to make sure you have your active project, make sure you have the right site that you want, and then you're going to go and click lease. And on here, you're going to be able to create this, click this create lease button. And that's going to be a form that you fill out to make a reservation for hardware. Before you do that, you're probably going to want to look at this host calendar. So this is the availability calendar I was talking about earlier. This is going to be where you actually be able to look for hardware. So if you're like, I need this GPU and I don't know when it's available, this is where you go and you look and you can see. So for instance, right now, this is going to show me what I have available for the Skylake node types. What you're going to see for the calendar is basically it's going to be each one of these is going to be a node. And then you're going to be able to see which of these have active reservations on them. So if they have some big colored block next to them, that means that the node is currently being reserved by another project. Alternatively, you might see a big gray block. That usually means that the node is offline. There's some kind of issue with the node or it's undergoing maintenance. Either case, if you see something in front of the node, it basically means it's not available. You won't be able to reserve it until after that lease has passed. You can look at different timelines. So can look 7 days out, 30 days out. You can adjust the timelines if you need to look further out. But this is a good way to just get a general sense of, what nodes are available and what you can reserve. So right now, based on this, I could reserve, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost about 10 different nodes are available for me to reserve right now here. So if I wanted to do that, I could come back here to this lease page and again, click this create lease. Then I'm going to write my first lease. So this is my lease form. I'm going to tell it what day I want the lease to start. So if I don't say anything, it's just going to default to starting today right away. But I can set a specific date. So if I wanted to book something for August, I could say August 1st at 12 o'clock. And then I can specify how long I want the lease to last. So quick note here, you cannot make leases longer than 7 days. If you try to do that, you will get an error and it will tell you it didn't work. So week is the longest you can make a lease for a reservation or for a resource. You are able to extend your leases within a certain amount of time of expiration, so long as the resource that you have reserved is not already reserved by another user. So if you have a lease and then no one's using it, you can extend the lease for another week. I believe it's within 48 hours of lease expiration. So, and then again, here you can specify the end time, etc. So that's kind of the basic form for the lease. That's just kind of specifying the timing. This part of the form is going to be where you're going to put the specifics about the actual nodes that you're going to use. So here you can tell it how many nodes you need. You can even specify a minimum or a maximum. However, if you want to make sure you're getting an exact amount of a particular node, you can just make sure that the minimum and maximum are equal. In most cases, I'm guessing you'll probably need maybe one node. If you need more, you can always specify that here. However, just be aware that you have to, if you request 10 nodes and there's only 9 nodes available, the whole lease is going to fail. It's not going to create 9 leases and then tell you, oh, we didn't get one. It's just going to fail the whole thing. So just be aware if you're trying to request more resources than there really are, you may get an error and you're not going to get any kind of partial completion there. And speaking of node types, so this is where you can specify the specific node type you want. So let's say I want GPU P100, I could specify that here. Again, this is going to be based off the site that you're on. So if you're looking at this and you're like, wait, what? Like, where's the resource? I don't see my resource. I just was looking at it. I just checked it. It's there. You're probably on the wrong site. Go switch to another site, and then you'll probably see the resource you want. Finally, the network aspect. So you can reserve networks, which you can do here by clicking this reserve network checkbox. Again, kind of similar to the resource reservation, you're going to be kind of selecting the specific type of resource, adding some filters for the specific resource you want. And then we also always recommend reserving a floating IP for your reservation, because that's going to be the way you connect your instance. So that's usually always going to want to reserve a floating IP at the very beginning. However, if you don't, you can always go back and allocate at a later time. And then we can click create on that, and it's going to, submit the lease and see if it can actually go ahead and, okay, so this case it didn't work because I have specified a network resource that's not available. So we'll just take that one out and then see if this works, but we won't worry about too much if it doesn't. And then lastly, so let me see if this can go through. Yeah, it worked. Okay. So, well, we'll see. At least it was submitted successfully, and now we can see the status is pending. We can see the details. So my start date, my end date, there's a lease name, etc. I can delete the lease if I need to. I can also update it here while it's not active. And then assuming it becomes active, it will show up here as status active. And once that status shows as active, that means I can use the lease. I'm ready to start actually working with resources. So let's just pretend that that says active now. I can go to instances here. And this is going to be, so now I've created my lease. I have the node that I want. I'm going to come here to actually launch the instance. And this is going to be where I configure a lot of the environments, and maybe some of the orchestration is going to be involved. So let's say this is my test instance. It says I have no active reservations. As I mentioned, you need to have that reservation active in order to use the instance. But, so, oh, actually, that's kind of annoying because I can't show you. Oh, yes, I can. Okay. So here you would select the reservation that you have after you've created it. If you don't have that reservation, again, you're not going to be able to create the instance. So very important, if you don't have the reservation, make sure you get that first. And then you can say how many instances you want to launch. So here would just say 1. And then under the source page, this is going to be where you select your boot source. So again, this can be an image, and it can be anything that's uploaded to our appliance catalog. So this might be Chameleon supported images. This could be user supported images. Perhaps one of your authors uploaded an image and they're asking you to use that image to start. Or they specify, I started with an Ubuntu image, and maybe they have the exact name for it that they use. So then you can come in here, and when you're configuring your instance, you can look for that Ubuntu image. I'm not sure why we have Ubuntu 16. That's pretty old. But you can find your, okay, so here's a Ubuntu 20 with CUDA, and then I'm going to click this arrow up, and that's going to add this to my instance. So when I boot my instance, it's going to use this specific thing that I've specified here. And then we can allocate networks. So we're going to do shared net. That's kind of the standard network that we'll use on Chameleon. If you need to use the Fabric stuff that I mentioned earlier, that's going to be this FabNet stuff. It's also much lower layer networking connectivity. And then the other important thing is to use key pairs. So these are going to be where you can access, upload your credentials and access your instances. There's a lot of other tabs in here that are, maybe of use. We have, networking information here that you can look at. There's a lot of orchestration stuff. This is mostly working with OpenStack heat templates. We have object storage that you can utilize on Chameleon with containers. And then also we have these shared file systems, or shares that we provide as another way of saving your data. Another important thing I'll call out here is if you're going to be working with the command line for Chameleon, this is a useful area where you can download configuration files that already have pre-populated all of your information, so that you can work easily with your projects from the command line on Chameleon. So that's going to be a really useful tool to download as well. And then finally, just as a kind of quick wrap up before we dive into questions, I'm going to kind of quickly show you the Trovi website. So I mentioned Trovi is another kind of interface where you can interact with the testbed. And this is specifically where we have artifacts that are uploaded by users. The artifacts themselves are going to be a selection of user artifacts, Chameleon artifacts that are supported by the Chameleon team. These include, basic templates like bare metal experiment pattern. This is like a Jupyter notebook that shows you, here's how you can set up a test bed or set up a lease, reserve a node, launch an instance, and run an experiment all from a single notebook. So if you're lucky, maybe your author went above and beyond and created a notebook or something like that on Trovi. If that's the case, then the way you would work with that is you would come to Trovi after you've got your account set up, your project active, all that stuff. Still the same, you still need all those prerequisites. But once you have that, you can come to Trovi and let's say, you're reproducing something, instead of kind of going through all those steps in the GUI like we've just been doing, instead you might come here and just launch the artifact directly on Chameleon from this website. And again, if you're logged in and your applications are all there, so you can see once I clicked launch, it already has my account information here. It's launching this on Jupyter ChameleonCloud.org. So we're in the environment, Chameleon environment here. And this server is going to start up. And once it starts up, I'll be able to basically see all of the workspace for this artifact. And I'll actually be able to work with it using testbed resources all through this interface. So it's quite nice option. And if you're fortunate enough to have someone upload a Trovi artifact for this evaluation, this is going to be the way you're going to evaluate it. Basically, click through to this interface, and then once you're in this interface, you'll have the work environment loaded here for you. And so I can open up this notebook here and I can see the code. And then I can actually run this code and interact with the testbed as if I were, on the testbed itself. So here I can see my projects. I'm using the KVM Attack website. I have these projects I can select from. And I can use these Python Chi libraries, that's this Chi module here, to programmatically interact with the testbed. So this is actually, speaking of H100s, if you do need to work with an H100, this is a artifact that potentially might be a starting place, or might give you some information about how to reserve these H100 nodes. So I'm gonna probably end here just because I've been talking way too much and I actually didn't want to talk this long at all. But I wanted to try and cover as much of the important information as I could. So that's it. As I mentioned, the help desk is great for getting help. We have blogs for finding information. Actually, I just released this blog on documentation, actually. So if you need to use our documentation, take a look at this blog. It gives you a good sense of all the different documentation we have on the testbed. And then there's a lot of other really useful stuff in here as well. So that's it for me. I'll go ahead and just open it up for questions.
Okay, I don't hear any questions being asked. Thank you very much for the thorough presentation. I think it was a very good review of how to use it, and especially for the blogs and pointers to the documentation and some of the example artifacts. I think that cleared up a lot of questions in my mind. I'm still kind of a new user to Chameleon Cloud myself. So does
Yeah.
anybody want to ask any questions to either the Chameleon Cloud people, or have any questions for me before we wrap this up?
Yeah, and Jennifer, just to echo your sentiment, this Chameleon is a sprawling resource we use.
I think your audio is breaking up a little bit, or maybe it's me.
It's literally built to for computer science researchers to go in and try out as much stuff as they can. So yeah, if you have any questions, like that's why I mentioned at the very beginning, we have the help desk where and I should say too, if you're going to the help desk, it's probably good to mention that you're part of the SC artifact evaluation, because that's probably going to be like we'll be a little more responsive to those inquiries, since there's some time sensitivity with this stuff. So if you need help, if you have more questions, please do not be shy. Please reach out to us. We are really thrilled to be supporting stuff like this, and we want to do whatever we can to make people's lives easier when they're involved in these evaluations. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on the test bed. Looks like we don't have any more questions. I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. Jennifer, I will put the recording on YouTube, same as last time. I will share that link with you, so you're welcome to then send that out to other folks as well.
And what about the slide deck? Is that something you could give us access to as well? So some people don't necessarily want to sit down and watch a video; they just want to reference slides. Is that captured somewhere?
I shared the slide deck from last time. This one should be pretty much the same, but I'll share it again, and then you're more than welcome to share that as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we only have a couple more people hanging on, it looks like, on the call. So a real quick question. How many users do you guys have on this platform? You have an estimate?
In what sense? Like how many?
How many people? How many customers have actually logged in and used Chameleon Cloud for anything since you launched? Do you have a count on that?
It's a little tricky because of course there's a lot of caveats about how you measure this stuff, but we've recorded over, I think the more accurate number is around 12,700 user accounts. So we have.
Wow. Okay.
That's how many people have created user accounts. It may not be, they may have created the account and then never used the resource. But and then I think, actually, I don't know if we've ever calculated how many users have created an account and used at least one resource. That would maybe be interesting to look at. But I do know from we typically see about anywhere from 300 to 400 monthly active users. So, people who are logging in at least once a month and reserving or doing some kind of interacting with some kind of resource.
Okay. All right. Well, good deal. Well, thanks for your time, Mark. I appreciate everything and we'll be in touch. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right. Bye.